You know that moment when you pull down to refresh your favorite social media app? Ever wonder what's really happening under the hood? Well, today we're going to dive deep and uncover the secret behind why those hot and trending feeds sometimes feel, well, a little slow.
Okay, so let's start with a problem that probably hits close to home for a lot of developers out there. You have this awesome idea for ranking content in real time, right? But when you go to build it, everything just grinds to a halt. So what gives? Why is building that hot feed so incredibly tough?
Naturally, your first suspect is probably the scoring formula. I mean, look at it. All that fancy math, the logarithms, those time decay functions, that has to be the bottleneck, right? Wrong. It turns out the real culprit, the true performance villain, is something much, much simpler, just sorting the data.
All right, let's get into it. To really understand why sorting is the bad guy here, we first need to bust a pretty common myth about what makes a database slow down. Now, this might sound a little backwards, but stick with me. Here's the truth. Your database is brilliant at math. Yeah, actually. Calculating a score, even a really complex one, is super cheap for a modern database. The arithmetic part of your query, it barely makes the CPU break a sweat. So, you might be asking, how is it so fast? Well, it's because of some really cool tech under the hood. Modern databases use these things called vectorized engines, and CPUs have special instructions. You might have heard of SIMD that can just chew through math. We're talking dozens of operations, like subtraction, in a single clock cycle. They are literally built to do millions of these things at lightning speed.
Okay, so if it's not the math, what is it? The real performance hit comes from two much heavier operations. First, you've got scanning. That's just reading all the rows you need from the disk. But the real bottleneck, the part that truly kills your performance, is step 2, sorting. This is where the database has to look at every single row and compare it to every other row to figure out the final order. And that is where things get really, really painful.
And this whole sorting problem, it gets 1,000 times worse when you throw time into the mix. This is where you run into a sort key that just refuses to sit still. See, most algorithms for hot content depend on the current time, right? A post score goes down as it gets older. This creates something called a volatile sort key. It's basically a value you're trying to sort on that is always changing, even if nobody has liked, commented, or even looked at the post.
I love this quote because it just nails the problem perfectly. Trying to work with a volatile score is like trying to index a column of ice cubes in the sun. It's melting, it's changing, its state is never fixed. So how on earth are you supposed to build a reliable system on top of something that unstable?
Well, the first thing to go right out the window is your database index. An index is like the one in the back of a textbook. It helps the database find stuff fast. But what happens if the page numbers in that index changed every single second? It'd be completely useless, right? That's exactly what happens here. The index is obsolete the very instant it's created.
Okay, so if your index is useless, that means you can't have a useful cache either. Caching is all about storing results that you know are going to be correct for a little while. But with a score that's always changing, any result you cache is wrong almost immediately. So caching is out. So, here's the real kicker. No index, no cache. What's the database supposed to do? It's left with one and only one terrible option. It has to rescan a huge number of rows and then do that super expensive, super slow sorting operation over and over and over again, every single time someone asks for the feed. Okay, so if doing a full sort every time is basically impossible at scale, then how in the world do huge platforms like Reddit or TikTok pull it off? Well, the short answer is they cheat. They use a bunch of really clever tricks to create the illusion of a perfectly sorted, real-time feed. Strategy number 1 is probably the simplest and most powerful one of them all. Just rank a much smaller set of stuff. You don't try to sort everything. You just focus on the items that actually have a chance of winning. So here's how that works in practice. Instead of trying to sort every single post ever made since the beginning of time, a platform might only look at posts from, say, the last few hours. That tiny 1% slice of candidates is way more manageable to sort. And the other 99%, the old stuff that has zero chance of trending, it just gets ignored completely. All right, the next big secret is that those trending scores, they don't actually update in real time. Not continuously, anyway. That would just be way too expensive to run. Instead, what they do is recalculate all the scores on a schedule. Maybe it's every 5 minutes, maybe it's every 10. This idea of batching the work is so much more efficient for the database. And the best part,
For you, the user, the feed still feels totally live and up to the minute. You'd never know the difference.
This brings us to the third big strategy. And this one is all about psychology, really. It comes down to a simple but really important question. What do we, as users, actually notice?
Think about it. If one post has a score of 98.7 and another has a score of 98.6, do you really care which one shows up first? The answer, of course, is no. So these systems don't waste time chasing mathematical perfection. They settle for a good enough ranking, and they only do that big, expensive resort when the scores get different enough that a human would actually notice the change.
And of course, there's a whole toolbox of other architectural tricks they use. Things like splitting data into fresh tables for new stuff and stable tables for old stuff, or using specialized tools like Redis, which are built for exactly this kind of leaderboard problem. The main idea is to keep all this crazy, fast-moving ranking stuff far away from the main database.
So, after all that, what's the big takeaway here? Well, if you're ever building one of these systems, you need to have a really fundamental shift in how you even think about the problem.
You've got to stop thinking that your job is to perfectly calculate a score for every single row in your database. Because, let's be honest, that path leads directly to a performance nightmare. Instead, think of it like this. Your real job is to manage a leaderboard, a small, constantly changing, constantly drifting leaderboard of the top contenders. The focus shifts away from perfect, precise calculation and onto the clever, efficient management of a short, fast-moving list. So, the next time you refresh your feed and it feels instant and perfectly ordered, you'll know the secret. It's not magic, it's a carefully orchestrated ballet of shortcuts and illusions, all designed to avoid that one single, incredibly expensive thing, a full sort. Kinda makes you wonder, what other clever illusions are your favorite apps hiding from you?